I'm Alan Dale from Gale Force Winds, and I got to tell you what a pleasure it is to be here at the Association of Allied Health Professionals. We Are Here podcast, and I want to tell you, these folks are here indeed, making a difference in the healthcare system in Newfoundland and Labrador. And on that note, sir, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us what you do.
Hi, well, I'm Dion Ross. I'm a clinical pharmacist. I work at the Biennial Hospital in the south coast of Newfoundland, right on the boot there.
Talk to me what a clinical pharmacist does. If you were sitting at a kitchen table in Newfoundland and Labrador, somebody asked you that question, how would you respond?
Well, obviously everyone knows what a pharmacist does because we are probably the most accessible healthcare professional that's out there now, because anybody can talk to a pharmacist. You just need to go to the local pharmacy. But a lot of people don't realize that we have pharmacists that work in our hospitals, and their role is to ensure that all our medications are administered properly to our patients and that they get the correct dosages. But things have changed so much in my almost 32-year career as a pharmacist. The scope of practice now of pharmacists has changed so much, and it expands so much that we can prescribe now. We work more hand in hand with physicians in ensuring that the treatment plan for patients is correct, as opposed to years ago it was more or less reactionary, that we'd be, physicians would send us their prescriptions and we would, oh yeah, that's okay, that sounds good. But now we're more on the front lines of making sure that upfront, that the patients are getting the correct treatment right away for their diagnoses.
All right. So you've seen quite an evolution of this over time.
It is, yeah. It's very much changed a lot in my 30-odd years of work, for sure. And as roles change and expand, and the scope of practice changes, and we become more accessible. So. In
that 32 years, always been in a hospital setting, or have you done a number of different?
I have worked. I have done some work in a retail pharmacy setting, in a community pharmacy in our locality, and I initially actually had to decide which direction I was going to go in my career, whether it would be, in hospital pharmacy, working in community pharmacy. And I actually did a clinical rotation when I was in university at the local hospital. And when I did that, I saw the role that they played, and I instantaneously knew that was a role I wanted to play in my career. And I started work at the hospital in Biennial and haven't looked back.
You haven't looked back. So what was your pathway into pharmacy? Was it something that sort of always intrigued you?
It did, in a way. I knew I wanted to be in a healthcare field, and I knew I wanted to be in a field that would help people. Yeah. And I just felt that it was a career path that I would like to choose. And I'm proud to say that actually my daughter just graduated a couple of years last spring from on as a pharmacist. And she's chose a different path. She's gone down the road of community, and but I know her famous saying is that she's a spitting image of her father, and she followed in my footsteps, so I'm quite proud of that as well too.
Yeah, so, I mean that speaks to obviously your passion for what you do.
Exactly.
And that's something that you don't sort of teach people. That you they see it in you and they follow that. So that's congratulations on that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Taking your 32 years now, and looking at the healthcare system, watching it over those last 32 years, what do you see some of the challenges that we're facing now?
I think some of the challenges now are, and it's probably a broken record, but it's just having the adequate resources to be able to, carry out our duties and our roles on a daily basis. And whether it's like staffing or equipment that we need, it always seems like we're lacking. And I think, there's not a profession, I don't think, in healthcare in the province that's not lacking in staffing. I mean, that's probably one of our biggest stresses and strains at the moment, is to having to do more with less people. Not because there's less positions available, it's just that there's less people to fill them roles. And whether it's, it seems that, and especially in rural Newfoundland, we find a lot that it's really hard to attract people to work in a smaller hospital. And most people now, they want to be in the big city where the services are, where the excitement is. It's very difficult to recruit to smaller areas of the province. And you think about like the hospital that I'm in Biennial, it's a smaller community hospital, but we cover a lot of roles. We do a lot of different services for the patients. And really, it's only if you need that specialized care that you need to come to the city. But if you don't have the staff in order to be able to provide those services, then that creates a problem. And I know, we're lucky in that we do have, our tertiary care centers that are here in St. John's, but patients would like to be able to get the care that they need in their home area and not have to travel for it. So
I want to take a little step back here. Your daughter, what's her name?
Catherine.
Catherine just graduated. Catherine's now facing a life in pharmacy in the healthcare system in Newfoundland and Labrador. What would you say to her are the opportunities that exist out there?
Well, I think the opportunities from our perspective, even as pharmacists really, is the expanding scope of practice that I just referred to. From being able to prescribe now for minor ailments, which is fabulous, because one of the big things that I think and the big problems that we're facing in healthcare in the province, just to go back a little bit, is not only a lack of healthcare professionals, but in some areas it's lack of a physician. We've got a fairly significant issue on the Bureau Peninsula now with being able to have access to family physicians. A couple are retiring now, and there's no one to fill those roles. The expanding scope of practice of pharmacists will allow someone who, say, has a minor ailment. I'll use a urine infection, for example. Instead of having to wait and probably go to emergency and wait for 4 or 5 hours to be seen, they can probably safely see their pharmacist at their local pharmacy and be assessed and be prescribed an appropriate treatment for that, which would obviously save them the stress of having to go to the hospital or having to go through the pain or the problems that they're dealing with. They can have it dealt with fairly simply, just because of the expanding scope of practice that pharmacists have now. So whether it's prescribing, vaccinations, pharmacists now can give vaccinations, which is absolutely fabulous. And it's that expanding scope of practice that I think is probably the key to being able to provide adequate health care to more people throughout the province without having to make, even in areas that there is a lack of physicians,
right,
then pharmacists can step in and fill some of those roles.
You had mentioned earlier on about sort of the team sort of approach, right, where you're more involved in the conversation now. And I want to bring you to the moment we're in now. Of course, you've got an incredible conference happening there.
It's fabulous.
You've got all of these professionals coming together, sharing ideas, collaborating. Talk to me about the importance of this conference and what you hope to take away from it.
Well, I think one word you use there is collaboration, and I think that's one of the more important things that we need to see within healthcare. Again, talking about the lack of physicians and the lack of healthcare professionals that are available, I think having that team approach and being able to work together to be able to come up with treatment plans for patients, so that it's not. I like the idea in some respects of having these, and as we mentioned about having collaborative care clinics where you can come in and you can see a physiotherapist, you can see an occupational therapist, dietitian, pharmacist, all under one umbrella. And I think that's going to be important for us going forward, to be able to use that and use the expanded scope of practice I referred to earlier, and being able to use that as a treatment. We sort of have to think outside the box, I think, with providing health care in the province going forward, and being able to make sure that for healthcare professionals like everyone that's here today for our conference are able to work to their full scope of practice and be able to fill those roles.
Well, you're certainly strike me as a guy that's not afraid to talk. So
I've been told that before, yeah.
So, if you had the opportunity to meet with the decision makers, the policy makers for the healthcare system in Newfoundland and Labrador, what would be the one thing that you would ask them to take away from what you would tell them?
And I think it probably may have already referred to it, is making sure that the professionals that you have and that are working, and taking pharmacists, for instance, even outside of the community, not community pharmacists, but hospital pharmacists, pharmacists that work in hospital, allowing them to be able to work, under their full scope of practice, allow them to be able to fulfill the roles that they can and will be able to fill, not be short-sighted, and make sure that if there's more roles that they can expand into, to not let legislation or any issues like that stand in the way, and I guess, not to use the term, but grease the wheels a little bit so that they can move forward in their career paths, and being able to use that. Obviously that comes with resources too, and able to have adequate staff in order to do that. One of the obviously big things that we see is when you're short-staffed, a lot of times what happens is a lot of the more important work that we want to do, the clinical work with the patients, actually falls by the wayside a little bit because the regular day-to-day duties of the pharmacy have to happen. You know, patients still have to get their medication at the end of the day, and pharmacists play that role as well in a hospital setting. But then that's at the cost of being able to have to pull back those clinical services. And that's one thing that I've seen over my career most, is that you get a clinical program working and things are working great, and then all of a sudden you have a staff that goes off for some reason, or they move. You're down to 50% capacity again, staffing, so something has to give. So you have to pull back those services. So being able to have adequate staff in order to be able to provide those services, I think, is paramount.
Yeah. What's the one thing you'd say to Catherine right now as she starts her practice?
Catherine right now, I got to say, she's got a good head on her shoulders, I must say. I can remember us having many conversations about her career path, and I had no influence whatsoever on her choosing hospital or choosing pharmacy as a career path. I would like to think there was some unwritten influence based on my career and how I have enjoyed it in my 30-odd years. She chose her own path, of course, to be a community pharmacist, which I think is fabulous, mainly because of, again, I referred to the expanding scope of practice and the things that she can do now in a community pharmacy that were never allowed before, like prescribing, giving vaccinations, and that's the type of thing that she really enjoys. So my advice to her was to not let go of any of that. Be sure that she works in an environment where she can work to the full scope of her practice. And not only that, look for ways and areas that she can expand upon that. I know she's talked about doing a diabetes education course so that she can be a registered diabetes educator. Fabulous. She's talked about travel health, being able to counsel people on vaccinations. Embrace all that. Move forward and make the decision to expand your practice and do as much as you can in your practice, and that will make you that much more happier in your career.
Well, this is what helping Newfoundland and Labradorians every single day in the healthcare system looks like. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Catherine.